You know what nobody talks about? There's an entire generation that just disappeared. Not literally, but culturally. We obsess over boomers, we analyze millennials, we can't stop dissecting Gen Z like they're some exotic species. But there's 65 million people born between 1965 and 1980 who just exist in the shadows. Your coworker who never complains but somehow fixes everything. Your parent who seems emotionally unavailable but shows up every single time. The person who built the internet but won't post a photo of their lunch. Generation X. And here's the thing nobody tells you. Their psychology isn't just misunderstood, it's a survival blueprint for a world that taught them one rule: nobody's coming to save you. Picture this. It's 1978. You're 8 years old. You walk up to your front door, turn the key in the lock, push it open. Silence. No, how was school? No snack waiting on the counter. No Ring camera alerting your mom you're home safe. Just emptiness. Both parents are working. You're alone. And this isn't a one-time thing. This is every single day. By 1984, 7 million American children between ages 5 and 13 were coming home to empty houses. The term they used? Latchkey kids. Now here's what that does to a developing brain. Neuroscientists call it a high-contingency environment. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that predicts consequences, goes into overdrive. Because when you're alone, mistakes aren't theoretical. Burn yourself making ramen? No adult. Lock yourself out? You're sleeping on the porch. Forget your homework? Face the teacher alone tomorrow. Your brain learned a brutal lesson. Actions have immediate, unavoidable consequences. That's why Gen X thinks 3 steps ahead in ways that confuse everyone else. They're not anxious. They're pre-calculating risk because that's how they survived childhood. But the empty house was just the beginning. Gen X watched their parents sell them a fairy tale, then watched it collapse in real time. Work hard, stay loyal, and everything will work out. Except, their parents' generation had the highest divorce rates in American history. Families imploded through the 70s and 80s. The message? Love doesn't last. They watched their parents give 30 years to a company, then get pink-slipped during restructuring. The message? Loyalty is a trap. They grew up during Watergate, Iran-Contra, the AIDS crisis fumbled by incompetent leaders. The message? Authority figures lie. Psychologists have a term for this: defensive pessimism. But Gen X doesn't call it that. They call it pattern recognition. Their brains developed what's called a negativity bias on steroids. Not because they're cynical, because their amygdala learned to scan for threats before processing hope. It's not, the glass is half empty. It's, the glass might shatter, so let me have a backup plan, and also let's not get too attached to this glass. So they built a shield, and that shield is irony. Crack a joke before it hurts. Keep everything at arm's length. Laugh it off before someone sees you bleed. You can trace this directly to the Cold War. Gen X grew up doing duck and cover drills in elementary school. Teachers casually explaining that if you see a bright flash, get under your desk. As if a wooden desk would protect you from nuclear annihilation. Think about the cognitive dissonance that creates in a child's brain. Adults are telling you the world might end tomorrow, but also, don't worry about it. Go do your spelling homework. Psychologists call this existential compartmentalization. Your brain learns to hold 2 contradictory truths simultaneously. Everything could collapse at any moment, but you still have to show up and function. So you cope by not taking anything too seriously, because if you do, the weight of it all will crush you. That's why Gen X invented the art of the emotional eye roll. Not because they don't care, because caring too much was a liability when the world kept proving it didn't care back. But here's where the story flips. Because all of that, the empty houses, the broken promises, the nuclear anxiety, didn't break Gen X. It forged them into something unexpectedly powerful. Let's talk about their work ethic. Gen X doesn't talk about grinding. They don't post productivity porn on LinkedIn. They just quietly become indispensable. Why? Because they learned early. You can't control if they'll keep you, but you can control if you're the last person they'd want to lose. They're not loyal to companies. They're loyal to competence. Paper routes at 5 a.m., fast food registers where you calculated change in your head when the machine broke. These weren't resume builders. They were introductions to consequence. And here's the paradox that confuses everyone. Gen X is simultaneously the most independent generation and the most quietly collaborative. They'll never ask for help. Been solving problems alone since they were 8. But if you need help, they'll show up. No drama, no social media post, no expectation of credit. This comes from forming survival bonds with friends when adults were absent. Neurologically, this created what researchers call selective interdependence, a network of trust so small and so fierce that it looks like isolation to outsiders. Here's what makes Gen X truly unique. They're the last generation that remembers life before the internet. The last generation that knows what it's like to be truly bored. To sit in a library for 3 hours hunting through card catalogs for one book that might have the answer you need. To fix your bike chain by flipping it upside down and getting grease on your hands, not by watching a YouTube tutorial. Cognitive psychologists call this deeper encoding. When information costs effort, it integrates into memory differently. It becomes part of you. And now they're watching their kids grow up in a world that's the exact opposite. Helicopter parents, constant supervision, social media documenting every moment. Gen X gave their children the attention they never had, but sometimes they worry they've made them too soft, too dependent, too visible. Because in the Gen X worldview, being visible means being vulnerable. And vulnerability? That's a luxury they were never afforded. So here's the truth about Generation X. They're not the forgotten generation. They're the invisible architects. They don't need your recognition. They don't want your praise. They're the bridge between the analog past and the digital future, holding both worlds together while getting credit for neither. Bridges don't get much attention. They're just there, doing the work, holding things together, expecting nothing in return. And you know what? That's the most Gen X thing of all. So here's my question for you. What's the most Gen X thing you've ever witnessed? The coworker who fixed the entire system and never mentioned it? The parent who showed up without being asked? The friend who helped you move and refused pizza as payment? Drop it in the comments. Because maybe it's time we actually see them.